Council, if you will come to order. It is 6:05 p.m.
Come to order, Alicia.
We are in special session. We are scheduled to allow for citizens' presentations. I don't believe any citizens are here to talk, so we're going to move forward. We're going to go into executive session in just a minute. Pursuant to the following designated sections of the Texas Government Code, annotated Chapter 551, the council will convene into executive session to discuss the following. A, Section 551-087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations under subsection 1 to discuss and deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand and they're in or near the territory of the governmental body in which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations. And subsection 2, to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect that the town seeks to have locate within their territory, potential projects and incentives. And B, 551-071, consultation with attorney under subsection 2, to consult with the town attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Texas Open Meetings Act, specifically breach of contract issues. It is 6:06. We're in closed session. Council will reconvene into a special session at 7:02 p.m. We were in a special session. Citizens, we're going to finish that with item number 2, consider and take appropriate action regarding an executive session. Council, does anyone have any action to take under item 2? Hearing none, I will declare the special session closed and we will adjourn at 7:03. We will now convene into a joint session with Economic Development Corporation 4B and the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1 Board. It is 7:03 p.m. And we'll call our meeting to order. We do have a full council here tonight. At this point, I'll refer to the Chair and President of EDC 4B and TERS 1 to call their meeting to order.
Okay, I'll call to order the EDC 4B. We have a quorum, and TERS number 1, we have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bone. In just a moment, I'm going to ask everyone to stand. We're going to be led in an invocation by Senior Pastor Barry Cleenan of the Church at Trophy Lakes. Afterwards, we're going to be led in pledges to the United States flag and the Texas flag by a group of Boy Scouts. So I'm going to ask, after we have the prayers, if the Scouts would come forward and turn and face the audience. Whoever's going to speak to lead us in the pledges can pull that microphone forward, although maybe it already is pulled forward. And we would then follow their lead in saying the pledge to the U.S. flag, followed by the pledge to the Texas flag. Holly, can you put the Texas flag page up there, or can we not? All right. Barry, where's Barry? We know, come forward, please, and I guess pull that mic back towards you this time. Let us stand, please.
The ancient Hebrew scriptures instruct us, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper." Our Father, we stopped for a moment tonight to acknowledge you and to acknowledge your sovereignty over all of your creation. And Lord, we come tonight with a thankful heart and to pray a blessing over all of our public servants. Lord, we pray for our mayor and council that you would continue to watch over them and bless them with wisdom as they lead our town. Lord, we pray for our town manager and all of our city employees that you would watch over them and bless them and meet every need in their lives. Lord, we pray for our fire chief and police chief and all of those that serve with them that protect us. And we ask that, Lord, you'd protect them even as they protect us. And Lord, tonight, as we go into times of business for our city, we pray as all times that, Lord, the meditations of our heart and the words of our mouth will always be found acceptable in your sight. And Father, we pray these things in the name of our great Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen.
Scouts, you want to come forward that are going to participate in this? Come on up to the front. And you'll notice there are flags back there in that corner that you can face as you face the people, okay? And please step a little closer to the mic and speak a little loudly as you do this, please, okay? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Scouts. It is time for citizens' presentations. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on any matter, whether or not it is posted on the agenda. The council is not permitted to take action on or discuss any presentations made to the council at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The council will hear presentations on specific agenda items prior to the council addressing those items. You may speak up to 4 minutes or a time limit determined by the mayor or presiding officer. To speak during this item, you must complete the speaker's form that includes the topics of your statement. Topics of presentation should be limited to matters over which the council has authority. Holly, I believe we had Mr. Jim Carter who wanted to speak. Mr. Carter, if you want to come to the microphone, you can pull that back towards you this time.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jim Carter, and I'm happy to be here tonight with you. I'm here to tell you, if you don't know, that I'm running for county commissioner again, and I hope you do. And that I appreciate the support that I got from Trophy Club during the primary. There is a runoff. I only was able to get 35%. My opponent got 24%, so we're in a runoff. Those days are early voting, or May the 14th through the 18th. The voting date is May 22nd. So I certainly appreciate the support. And Mayor, I'm sorry that I'm not going to be able to stay for the agenda. There's one item that I'm extremely interested in on your agenda, the Loop Road. I think we talked about that a few years ago when I was sitting here. And but thank you very much. And I do have another meeting tonight, and I'm going to have to excuse myself. But thank you for that, and please have your support for me on that date. It will mean a lot to me to be commissioner again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Holly, do we have someone else?
We do, Luann Oldham, but she'd like to speak regarding the Loop Road item. That's after executive session.
All right. And she's willing to stay till after that? Luann, is that okay? All right. And so the item, the Loop Road item, okay, very good. All right. We have a couple of items of business that the TERS and EDC need to conduct before we adjourn into, go through our proclamation and go into another executive session. So Sean, thought I'd give you a time if you want to approve your minutes and other business that each of your boards have to do. I'll give you a chance to do that.
Okay. The EDC 4B, item 12018-137-C, consider and take appropriate action regarding the appointment of the vice president. I'd like to make a motion for Corey McDonald to be vice president of EDC 4B. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Travis seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion approved. Second item is consider and take appropriate action regarding the EDC 4B minutes dated January 18, 2018. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Steve had it first. I have a good vantage point here. Sorry to speak during your meeting.
All right, motion's approved. And looks like for TERS, first item is item 12018-125-T. Consider and take appropriate action regarding the TERS number 1 minutes dated January 18, 2018. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Jared Hall, second. All those in favor? Motion passes. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. All right, we are still in our joint session. Item number 1, consider and take appropriate action regarding a proclamation to the Town Council recognizing November 12 through 18, 2018 as World Antibiotic Resistance Awareness Week in Trophy Club and providing an effective date. And I'm going to have the Mayor Pro Tem read that proclamation, and whoever's going to give us a presentation, if you would go ahead and move to the microphone, please. Go ahead and read it, and let's vote, and then we'll let them present.
Okay, a proclamation of the Town Council of the Town of Trophy Club, Texas, recognizing November 12th through 18th, 2018 as World Antibiotic Resistance Awareness Week in Trophy Club and providing an effective date. Whereas antibiotic resistance has become a global health dilemma reaching within the United States, and whereas at least 2 million people have been killed because of antibiotic overdose, and antibiotics abuse is the cause of 1 out of 5 emergency department visits for adverse drug events, ADEs, and 7 of the top 10 drugs involved in ADEs leading to emergency room visits are antibiotics. And whereas November 12th through November 18th has been declared as a World Antibiotic Resistance Awareness Week by the World Health Organization, where people in Trophy Club will be informed and made aware of antibiotic resistance and how to stop it. And whereas the town of Trophy Club seeks to promote the good health of townspeople and by making hospitals, schools, and the general public more aware, there will be less deaths and overdoses in the near future. And whereas by providing antibiotic resistance awareness and allowing the community to be informed on the dangerous issue regardless of social or economic status, education, gender, origin, religious belief, age, lifestyle abilities, the enlightenment of knowledge is shown in the community. And whereas the Stop the Resistance campaign was created to initiate student-led and community-wide awareness that will help fund additional research. Through this campaign, students and their families and our residents will be called to action to change their community and the world. Now, therefore, Mayor C. Nick Sanders, in conjunction with the Town Council of the Town of Trophy Club, Texas, does hereby proclaim November 12th through 18th, 2018 as World Antibiotic Resistance Awareness Week, passed and approved by the Town Council of the Town of Trophy Club, Texas, this 27th day of March, 2018. And I will make a motion to approve proclamation number 2018-04.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It is seconded by Councilmember Fleury. All in favor, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. All right, Comfort. At first, I didn't think you were going to have other people with you, so as you get to the microphone, would you please introduce your group and then go forward with the presentation?
Hi, my name is Comfort Ajiboye.
I'm Zion Evangelista. I do apologize for I have lost my voice.
I'm Nicole Sum. And I'm Stephanie Garcia.
All right, thank you, ladies.
So we are the community awareness team from HOSA.
Pull the mic a little bit closer to you if you would. You don't have to.
It'll move. It can move. Just pull
move
it
the
down.
mic.
Yeah,
There you go.
It
Good.
bends. There you go.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are the community awareness team from HOSA, and we are representing Byron Nelson High School. And we recently have won the opportunity to compete with the rest of the state of Texas. So to put ourselves out there, we are here today to spread awareness about antibiotic resistance. And there are over 12,000 residents in this fair town, and we are all in danger of this worldwide pandemic.
I'm sure most of us have taken antibiotics at some point in life, but very few of us have taken it seriously, which can lead to a serious issue. There's an alarming antibiotics resistant and danger increasing of antibiotic resistant. And to label it as pandemic soon, it might not be an exaggeration.
The abuse of antibiotics has already killed around 2 million people worldwide, according to the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control. We chose this topic to be our project because we wanted to aware the people in this town about this public health issue, because by the year of 250, it could end up to killing 10 million plus more people.
Do you need me moving the slides, or are you?
Yeah, after our
All right.
Our goal is to spread awareness about this global threat on a wide scale throughout Trophy Club and neighboring communities. And with your influential assistance, we think our project can be proved to be successful. So our first slide is, what is antibiotic resistance? So basically, when we take antibiotics are generally used to slow or kill bacterial growth and it harm bacteria that are usually supposed to harm us. However, antibiotic resistance is basically when those bacteria becomes resistant to those antibiotics, prolonging the suffering of those illnesses that were supposed to be easily treatable.
So, this occurs when bacteria change in a way that reduces the overall effectiveness of drugs, chemicals, or other agents that are designed to prevent and cure these infections. And one example of that is bacteria could mutate and alter their external structure, which prevents the antibiotics from attaching itself to the cell in the first place. And those special traits get passed down to more and more bacteria, and they start to grow and multiply, which causes a lot of harm.
Each year in the United States, at least 2 million people become infected with the bacteria, and out of those 2 million, around 23,000 people die of it. And so this shows us how it can affect us, but how no one says a word about it.
The main cause of antibiotic resistance is when people don't follow through the entire regimen. Most discontinue after their symptoms start declining, which again, bacteria will grow stronger and adapt and continue to multiply. Other causes include smaller factors such as poor hygiene, sharing medication, and a lack of new antibiotics.
So our whole HOSA project, to begin with, we started putting up posters in our school and our local library in Roanoke, as well as giving a presentation similar to this to an academy class at our school at Bryan Nelson.
We also created various social media accounts and an online portfolio where we display our knowledge on antibiotic resistance.
Not only this, but we are able to partner up with other organizations, as well as we created awareness places, which we brought for you guys today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Put mine on. Get it on.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
If the audience would like some, we have extras, so if you would like one, we can pass them out to you when we're finished.
We hope that with all that we have done in this special meeting, our future plan, we can progress and into HOSA competition.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Before you leave, I would like to get a picture.
Yes.
And so I'm going to have you go back to my right where the flags are in the seal, and we'll get back there, and I'll present you the proclamation, take a picture, and then you can be finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sammy, I'm about to eat this paper.
Weren't you the one who said this was going to be way too tight? There wasn't enough room for it?
That would. Is she going down there to take a picture with us?
Yeah?
What happened to the camera?
Mass statistic.
So,
Top 5 class.
Top 5 what?
Oh, you didn't see it? Oh,
Now what?
just Tuesday night.
that was expensive.
What's,
I've never read it. I've never read it before either, so I didn't know to be prepared. I just read off the dome.
That was like Lauren Michaels on a Saturday night, just reading it cold.
oh, that I saw.
Back, front.
Where was it?
I saw the top 5.
Well, I've read that, yeah. Yeah. All that.
We did that.
Everybody, approximation.
And the Adirondack.
And then funding it, thanks for it, because we.
we are going to move into our executive session as soon as I finish this reading. I'll have to ask everybody that's not essential to the meeting to leave the council chambers. You're welcome to go out into the foyer for that. Pursuant to the following designated sections of the Texas Government Code, annotated Chapter 551, Texas Open Meetings Act, the council will convene into executive session to discuss the following. Section 551087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations under subsection 1, to discuss or deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations. And subsection 2, to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to business prospect that the town seeks to have locate within the territory of the town, potential projects and incentives. It is 7:23. We are in executive session.
Can we go?
Council and boards, we will reconvene into our joint session at 7:51. Item 3, consider take appropriate action regarding the executive session. Council, do you have any action?
None.
All right, Sean, do you want to see if your boards have any action?
EDC 4B, any action? No action. TERS number 1, no action. Make a motion to adjourn EDC 4B.
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. EDC is adjourned. Make a motion to adjourn TERS number 1.
A second.
All right, all in favor? Let's go home.
Thanks, guys.
You want to give us a time, Chairman?
7:52.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, it is 7:50. I'm sorry.
2.
No, it's 7.
Oh, 57. Yeah.
7:57. I said that wrong. And we are reconvening into our regular session. All right. Tom, you're next on the agenda, so.
Want to take a break?
All right. All right. Item number 4, receive town manager classes update and provide input regarding the following: Back to Nature event and staffing. Tom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to give you a brief update on our Back to Nature event. As you know, the Back to Nature event was held at Trophy Club Park on March 18th. As luck would have it, the weather was perfect for us, so we had a great morning and afternoon. We estimate about 500 of our residents and guests were in attendance. And I'd just like to take a moment to personally thank our staff and the many volunteers who put in such a great deal of time to make the event the success that it was. So I wanted to thank everybody for that. With regard to staffing, I'm pleased to announce that we've recently filled 2 very critical positions in the town. Jill Lind has been hired as our new communications and marketing manager. Jill has served for the past 9 years with the city of Southlake in various capacities, most recently as Southlake Senior Marketing Manager, specializing in marketing, brand management, promotion, and budget administration. Jill is also a Trophy Club resident, and she will begin work with the town on April 9th. Secondly, Steve Woodard, has been hired as our new police captain over the patrol division. Steve has 33 years of experience with the Irving Police Department, where he served in various capacities, most recently at the rank of lieutenant in charge of the department's Crimes Against Persons unit. Steve retired just last week from the Irving Police Department and is looking forward to taking on a new challenge here at the town of Trophy Club. And Chief Arata and I are extremely pleased that we were able to attract a law enforcement professional of Steve's stature to fill this newly created position of captain. Steve will begin work with the town on April 2nd. And I'm also pleased to announce that two of our former police cadets, Trey Richardson and Levi Cobbler, graduated from the Police Academy this past Friday. They were sworn in as police officers, and they were now on board with us and start the field training program. And then lastly, we're going to have an official pinning ceremony before council at the next meeting where we'll formally introduce our new officers to council. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Council, any questions on the reports? Hearing none. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are on our consent agenda. All matters listed on as consent agenda are considered to be routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Council, anybody wish to remove any of the items 5 through 10?
Yes, I'd like to remove number 8 and number 10.
All right. Schaffner wishes to remove 8 and 10. So then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agendas without 8 and 10. Anyone wish to move that?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items not including 8 and 10.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Rowe and a second by Councilmember Jensen. All in favor, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. We will then go to item 8, and item 8 is case TUP 18-005, Trophy Club Women's Club Community Garage Sales. Consider and take appropriate action regarding a request from Trophy Club Women's Club for a temporary use permit by special privilege to allow 2 community garage sales in calendar year 2018. Lisa Payne went through that and the P&Z approved. Philip?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask 2 questions, point out 2 things. I notice a lot of times after the garage sale, and this is mainly a question for Tony, I noticed that our guys are having to pick up a lot of the signs after the garage sales. Do we make it clear that it is the applicant's responsibility to do that? Because I notice your guys having to do a lot of that type work.
Apologies, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I noticed that after the garage sale that your guys are having to do a lot of the cleanup. Do we make it clear, and I assume that they have to go through the events committee, do we make it clear that the responsibility is the applicants to pick up those signs?
At the meetings, we do, yes, that's correct.
You may just want to clear that with them, because I know that your guys are having to do a lot of that. I know in years past that you've kind of taken on the brunt of that. And then Chief Harada's not here, but I think there's a misunderstanding that the police are not responsible for the enforcement of individual permits. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make those 2 things clear. And with that, I will approve the 2 dates for the garage sale.
Motion to approve.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Schaffner to approve item 8. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Rowe. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving 8, please show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. All right, and what was your other item? 10?
Yeah.
Consider to take appropriate action regarding an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Trophy Club, Texas, amending subsections F and G of Section A1.014, water and wastewater fees for Public Improvement District Number 1 of Appendix A fee schedule of the town's Code of Ordinances and providing a penalty and effective date. Philip, you have the floor.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Bill and Mr. Flynn are here today to hear this. I would like for staff to research a governmental rate. I think Bill and Danny Mayer had brought this up several years ago, way before, probably 2012, maybe 2011. But I would like staff to research a governmental rate, and at some point, I would like to work with the new board to discuss the merits of a governmental rate. I think that I had requested to get the consumption of water for all of the commercial users. And if you'll notice, I don't know if you've looked at this report, but the residential part of the sewer rate is staying the same. So the PID will not be affected, the MUD will not be affected as far as the residential rate. But the commercial rate is going up, and the town is a big consumer of water and wastewater in town. Now, most of our stuff is irrigation meters, so we aren't affected as much, but we certainly do have, I think, the pool where we talked about changing it, and it was going to cost too much money to change. They used 2.3 million gallons of water last year. All of that water is charged sewer, and because there's no winter average, there's no break. I mean, you pay whatever you consume in water, you pay for sewer as well. And then I'm not sure on Trophy Club Parks. I think there was $485,000. I think that may be water as well, not irrigation. And so anyway, I just at some point would like for staff to research this and for us to reach out to the new board and work with them and perhaps look at a governmental rate for not only the sewer portion of it, but also the water portion of it. And so that's why I wanted to pull that.
All right.
And with that, I would approve, I would make a motion to approve, since I don't have the power to approve. I would make a motion to approve these new rates.
Do you have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Schaffner, second by Jensen. And before we vote, Tommy's standing at the podium. Did you have anything to add?
No, Mayor and Council, I'm just here in case you have questions that I might be able to answer.
Any questions, anybody?
Yes.
Greg?
That does include Byron Nelson High School also, correct? Because they're one of our largest users, or MUD's largest users.
I think that all of that can be discussed amongst us with the new board.
All right. All those in favor of approving item 10, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are now in item 11. Consider to take appropriate action regarding the acceptance of the audit of the Town of Trophy Club fiscal year 2017. Amber, are you coming up, or John, or whoever, along with Lewis Breedlove. I'll get that right in a minute. All right, Amber?
Good evening, Council. Staff is really pleased to announce that we had a successful audit of fiscal year 2017, and here to present our comprehensive annual financial report is Lewis Breedlove. He's our audit manager from our CPA firm, Brooks, Watson & Company.
Pleasure to be here. Like she said, I'm Lewis Breedlove, audit manager with Brooks Watson. I was able to work pretty extensively with Amber and the rest of the finance team in town to complete your audit. In front of you, you have a few items. You should have the bound copy of the CAFR, as well as, so do we have a PowerPoint?
We have a letter.
Sorry, I don't know. As well as a copy of the printed presentation, which will also be on screen, and 2 letters that accompany that. Rather than thumbing through the CAFR bound copy of the report, I'll be going through the presentation, thank you, which will cover all the primary areas of the report that contain the financial information. Okay. So first, I'd like to walk you through our audit, an overview of the audit process. So the audit is performed in accordance with generally accepted accounting or auditing standards. And the audit process is a risk-based approach, meaning we evaluate each area of the financials, determine risks, and use that to drive the way we perform our audit throughout each area of the financial statements. We evaluate and determine the risk by performing preliminary analytic procedures, by also obtaining and understanding the town internal controls and evaluating the design and implementation of internal controls for each significant audit area. To elaborate on that, we come in at this phase of the audit and we sit down with each department. What that looks like is we walk through the process, evaluating and identifying any controls that are in place and any room for other controls that could potentially be added. And then we do a series of testing selections through each department and make sure that those procedures and controls are actually being implemented as we're doing our testing. And also to add, Amber and the finance team have done an excellent job in identifying controls to be implemented and making sure that if there are any new controls to add, how to add those. So they've been doing an excellent job. To continue, we also evaluate accounting systems and the integrated controls and overall impact of IT on the town's operations. Assessing various organizational, financial, and fraud risks through discussion with management and results of our planning procedures, and then by designing our audit procedures with a focus on areas containing the greatest risk of material misstatement, error, and fraud. Next, we agree the financial statement elements to underlying accounting records. We inspect documents and as well as other means to verify account balances. We confirm as much as possible, so that being cash, AR balances, investments, debt, anything possible that we are able to confirm with a third party, we do that. We also perform specific analytical procedures considering historical trends and events within the town. And then finally, we move into our completion phase where we evaluate the sufficiency and appropriateness of the audit evidence obtained, perform an overall analytical review, evaluate and conclude on the results of the audit procedures. We assist in the preparation of the town's annual financial report, and then we issue our opinion. This report is a comprehensive annual financial report, also known as a CAFR. The town did receive a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting for the previous year. This is above and beyond the standard reporting requirements, as the CAFR provides additional transparency for both council and the public, provides the availability of detail that otherwise may not be noticed, and compiles historical statistics to assist in the understanding of the town's economic condition and history. Next, the components of the CAFR include the letter of transmittal, auditor's opinion, management's discussion and analysis, basic financial statements, which are including the government-wide statements. This converts your fund level statements from modified accrual to a full accrual. You have your fund level statements, your notes to the financial statements, in addition to your required supplementary information and your statistical section. Next, the independent auditor's report. This contains our audit opinion. There are 4 possible outcomes: your unmodified, modified, disclaimed, and adverse. The town did receive an unmodified opinion, and this is the highest level of assurance that we as auditors are able to provide. The rest of the pages at the top, you'll find that there is a page reference to the CAFR reports, just so if you want to compare these pages to the report. These are financial highlights that can be found in the MD&A. Total assets exceeded total liabilities by $36 million. The town had an overall increase in net position of $1.9 million. The town's governmental funds reported a combined ending fund balance of $15.3 million. This is a decrease of $2.4 million, which is primarily attributable to capital expenditures made during the year. Unassigned fund balance in the general fund was $4 million. This is 43% of annual general fund expenditures. This exceeds both the recommended at least 25% that we recommend be the minimal goal, and then also the town has an internal threshold set at 30%, so you exceed both those. In addition, the town's net pension liability totaled $2.4 million as of year end. All right, next is a summary of the town revenues for governmental activities. Total revenues were $16.2 million. For a few of the notable changes, property tax had an increase of 6%. This is primarily due to an increase in assessed values. Charges for services was up by 30% due primarily to the Public Improvement District fire assessments received by the town this year, and operating contributions increased by 76% as a result of funds received from the MUD. Both of these increases, the charges for services as well as the operating and contribution increases, are offsets to the new operating expenses for the fire department that the town took on this year. Next is a summary of town expenditures. Total expenditures for governmental activities were $14.6 million. This is showing you the highest, kind of breaking it down from highest to lowest portion of total expenses. Highest being public safety with $4.5 million, or 31% of the total expenditures. That saw the biggest change this year, and that was an increase of 29%, and that's due to those new operations for fire this year that were taken on by the town. Next is your summary of the statement of revenues, expenditures, and the changes in fund balance. Going from left to right, the general fund had revenues exceeding expenses by $826,000. After other financing sources and uses, it still had a positive change of $168,000 in fund balance. Your debt service fund, expenses exceeded revenues by $43,000, but after other sources and uses had a positive increase in fund balance of $165,000. Your capital projects fund had expenses exceeding revenues by $7.7 million. This is due to some large capital expenditures that were taking place during the year. This is offset by other financing sources of 5.2, and that primarily contains the issuance of the 2017 CO bonds amounting to $4.4 million. PID saw a reduction in fund balance of $103,000, and then your total other non-major governmental funds had a combined net decrease of $202,000 in fund balance as well. Next, this is your summary of your budget to actual. Far left, right column rather, will show you the comparison between your actual numbers and your final budget, summarizing the total variance for your revenues, expenses, and so forth. Your revenues it fell a little short, $350,000 less than budgeted. Your expenditures had a positive variance of $1.2 million, meaning that you guys spent that much less than budgeted. Your total net change, total budget variance is $942 positive variance. So assuming you guys were able to accomplish everything you set out to for the year, this is a sign of a very healthy fiscal budget year. Next, this is your summary of the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for your proprietary funds. What we look for here is to make sure that these funds are self-sustaining, which both are. A Trophy Club Park has operating income of $61,000. Yeah, after transfers out, it still has a total change in net position of a positive $41,000. Storm drainage utility, operating income of $324,000, and a total positive change in net position of $233,000. Next, this is your schedule of changes in net pension liability. This is in relation to TMRS. What we look at here is this is reflecting the total pension change for the year. So at the very top is your prior year balance. Top right corner is your net prior year. 2.8 million was your last year's net pension liability. If you follow that down to the bottom, your total net change is a decrease of $386,000 in your liability. And the way to follow these columns, the far left column is the total liability set by TMRS, determined by TMRS. The center column is the town's coverage, and then that far right column is the net of those two. So there's a few driving factors here with the pension liability. Biggest factors are going to be contributions made into the plan, benefit payments out of the plan, the market, and then a big variable would be the change in actuarial assumption. So this is a moving target that we see every year. Last year, everyone's pension went up due to primarily to the market. This year, the market did better. You guys, that's why you are seeing, that's primarily why you're seeing a decrease in that liability. But note at the bottom that the current funder ratio is 87.63% for the year. This is up from last year's 82.63%. The average is 72.9%. So you guys are well above the average funding ratio and headed in the right direction. So no concerns there. And TMRS does an excellent job of being very conservative and the rates that they use and trying to ensure that you are using the best rate for contributing rates for that plan. With that, I will open up for any questions you may have about the report, the presentation, or as well as the two letters that are accompanying the report. The two letters go through audit entries, which would include any entries that we made, as well as any entries that were just made for presentation purposes, as well as entries that were provided to us once we received the numbers from the financing team. And then the other letter contains a couple of items that we identified as some suggestions for this coming year.
Thank you, Louis. All right. I will tell the council that we had the budget subcommittee meet and go over these reports and offered some suggestions and had questions about things for clarification, and those items have been presented to you. And anybody else have a question prior to the approval? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the audited financial reports for fiscal year 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve or to accept the audit for the Town Trophy Club fiscal year 2017.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Was that Greg?
Yep.
All right. So a motion and a second. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. Amber and your staff, thank you so much. Tom, Tom is up here. Thank you so much and appreciate the due diligence that y'all offered in the audit, noticing a $400 thing that wasn't accounted for. So you caught the $400 deal. All right.
Yeah, we're penny pinchers. We make sure that everything's counted for.
All right. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, council, before we go to item 12, I'm going to go to a recess if there's no objection to that. All right, so it is 8:22. We will stand in recess for 5 minutes. 8:30, and we have returned from recess, and we are on item 12, receive an update from town staff and take appropriate action regarding the proposed loop road. Tom, I believe you have the floor.
Mayor and council again, good evening. As a reminder, the Corps of Engineers 2001 Lake Grapevine Master Plan was proposed ostensibly to minimize the number of easements granted in environmentally sensitive areas, or what we call ESAs. And as a result of the master plan, the Corps placed 3 restrictions on the granting of easements within the ESAs. Just want to take a minute just to remind council what those restrictions were and how they may the implications for the town right at this point. All the requests would only be granted when no practical alternative exists, is number one. Number two is that request must have the least identifiable environmental or visual impact. And then third, all requests must consider routing of the easement to an adjacent land outside the ESA if an adjacent land was there and a potential to route outside of that. And then the 3 criteria that the Corps uses to determine a demonstrated need for the easement in ESAs are very simply whether there is, again, adjacent private land outside the ESA that can be utilized. In our particular case, this would be land just south of the ESA, which is owned by the Trophy Club Country Club. Second criteria is whether the proposed roadway would qualify as a regional arterial, which again would mean whether it traverses multiple municipalities. And then third, whether there is a demonstrated public safety need for the loop road. So I'd like to address the first two criteria, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Carroll, who will address the third criteria, or the public safety criteria. So with regard to the criteria number one, I've had discussions with the Trophy Club Country Club general manager, who expressed a willingness to at least discuss the matter with the town. However, he did want to point out that any modification that would negatively impact the overall integrity of the golf club, especially as it might relate to a change in hole number 8 on the Whitworth course, would likely not be approved by the country club management. And at any rate, if we were to ask for that, the request would have to go through a complete legal review with Club Corps management, and would ultimately be decided by the vice president of Club Corps. And then with regard to criteria number 2, the arterial designation, we would not fit in that particular criteria insofar as the roadway would not qualify, again, because it does not go in between different municipalities. So we don't feel as though that would be a criteria that we might be able to overcome with any kind of an appeal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Carroll, who will talk specifically about the public safety aspect of a potential appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the research that Chief Arida and I completed over the last several weeks in order to look at how the addition of a loop road could possibly affect some safety factors within our town. In looking at the data, we looked at 3 main criterion that we wanted to see if it proved or did not prove to be true. The first of which is obvious was response times. We looked at response times to and from multiple areas within the town. We also looked at hazardous materials and high hazard locations, and whether or not the loop road would in effect help us gain an advantage when responding to those types of incidents. And then lastly, we looked at evacuation routes. If the town was to have some kind of a catastrophic incident in which we needed to evacuate a large number of town members or residences, these main evacuation routes were looked at as possible factors. When we dug into the data, really what we found is there's only 2 factors that were affected by the loop road, and that was response times and the evacuation routes. We did not count hazardous material or high hazard locations. Reason being, we have no entities in town or businesses in town that store enough hazardous materials to be classified as a high hazard. We looked at the mud being, the water treatment facility at the mud being our largest member, storing the largest amount of hazardous material. They store a significant amount of chlorine over there, but it falls underneath the limits for a Tier 2 report, which is the deciding factor on whether or not it's considered a high hazard. The other instance was general response to high hazards. Most of those high hazards are along the 114 corridor with the hotels. We also have some of the schools and some other locations as well that would be considered high hazards. But what we know about responding to high hazard incidents, especially on the fire side, is that the amount of personnel and resources that it takes for us to mitigate those type of situations far outweigh the amount of resources that we have here in Trophy Club. So we're going to be dependent upon those mutual aid partners and automatic aid partners to come in, which really limits the how effective or how important that initial team's response is, because there's very little on a high hazard incident that those initial responding units can do until we gather some more folks together to fight these particular types of fires or large incidents that could be going on at a high hazard address. It just takes a lot more people to gather larger teams to begin the operation. So that makes those initial responses for those incidents not less important, but definitely less impactful to the successful outcome. As we looked at response times, you have to understand that the police department responds from really 3 different areas within the town. So the police department is split up into 2 different districts, or our town is split up into 2 different police districts. We have an east side and a west side district. So you have 2 officers on duty at minimum staffing, so 1 in each district. So those officers would respond from their district into their district the majority of the time. But then they would also respond from town hall if they were doing town hall business here, whether it's a meeting that they were at or whether they were here doing reports or working with investigators, those kind of things. So they would also respond from town hall often. And then the lastly would be from one district to the other district. If you had to back up another officer or if you had multiple calls coming at the same time in 2 districts, you only had 1 officer over there, then you have a second officer responding from his other district. The fire units are very similar, right? So the majority of the time, we're going to try our best to be responding from the fire station. As you can see from here, the fire station is located right in here next to these water tanks. So that's pretty centrally located within the city. So we like those guys to stay at the fire station as much as possible unless they're out doing official business, unless they're doing public educations, they're out doing inspections for the town, or they're out on a previous call, returning from a previous call, or could be out training in the district. When we look at these response times, as you see here, if you looked at our response from town hall for a police response, what you're going to see is the town hall response to the far north end of Trophy Club Drive. And the average response time there for PD units is around 7 minutes, and it's 12 minutes if it's a non-emergent response, if they're not running lights and sirens. And you can see the route there. If you look at from Town Hall to the far end of Indian Creek, which is around the 650 Indian Creek, it's 2.6 miles, and an emergent response is about 4 minutes. Obviously, that distance is not nearly as great, so they get there a little quicker. And then lastly, if we look at Trophy Club Drive to Indian Creek, so worst case scenario, the furthest part of one district to the furthest part of the other district, police units are making it there in an emergent situation in about 11 minutes, so long as it's not during school zone times. And fire units, if you're doing the same thing, is around 13 minutes. So the average is around 12 for both of us. We're obviously a little slower. We're carrying a lot more weight in those vehicles. Fire truck weighs about 60,000 pounds, and actually the engine weighs about 67,000 pounds, and the truck weighs about 80,000 pounds. Takes a lot more room to stop. A little harder going over the terrain on the Indian Creek side for those big motors to take care of that. So it makes our response a little bit longer. If we look at the evacuation routes, there's 4 main evacuation routes that are in our emergency response plan. If you look here, as you see on the screen, you have on the east side of town, you go from Indian Creek down to Trophywood, and from Trophywood you can access 114 Service Road, or you can head even further east over to T.W. King and exit the city that way if you're coming from this side of town. If you're in the more central locations of town, then you can obviously come down Trophy Club Drive directly down to 114, or further around the corner or above the Trophy Lake area, then you would come down Trophy Club Drive here to Trophy Lake down to 114. On the far north end of town, your best option is Trophy Club Drive over to Bobcat to Marshall Creek, and then of course Bobcat goes straight into 377 as well. But the Marshall Creek access road is actually a little faster and a little shorter than going straight down Bobcat. On this slide, if you look, the red portion there highlighted is the addition of the loop road. So that's just an approximate. You know, we're doing the best we can. They're drawn on these overhead maps. But so that's the approximate location of the loop road, the proposed loop road. If you look at the response from Town Hall to the far north end of Trophy Club Drive, obviously you'd see a great deal of change there. As you see, it's going from 4.9 miles to 3.3 miles. So you're going to have a significant change in the response time. And I believe it's dropping from 7 minutes to 3 to 4 minutes. Or I'm sorry, 3 to 4 minutes. And then the worst case scenario that we spoke about before, if you're on the far east side of town and you had to go up to the far north end of town off Trophy Club Drive, that 12-minute average response now becomes 2 to 3 minutes because you're just jumping right across on the loop road. So there's an obvious advantage there. And then on the evacuation route side, the advantage of the loop road really comes into play if you have a major blockage of that main artery, either Indian Creek or Trophy Club Drive. So if you were to have a block a blockage in Indian Creek that was anywhere just north of Trophywood, then all of the residents north of Trophywood would have no way to evacuate the city, right? The only way that we could do that is there's a spot over off Eagles Court where we could cut down some trees, add some gravel in an emergent situation, and we can get you out off Eagles Court. But honestly, there's no other evacuation route for those folks.
But
Now,
couldn't you potentially go through Hogan's?
yes, you could go through Hogan's Glen. That's correct. You could cut through Hogan's. We'd have to get the gates open if the mayor and his group would let us go through there. You know, we could do that as well.
Guard's going to keep it out.
But of course, depending on the damage and exactly where that would be, would limit our routes. The truth of the matter is, when we look at our evacuation routes, they're in pretty good locations, and there's not a whole lot of area. The blockages would have to be in the perfect area to keep us from having a multiple routes throughout the city. Probably the worst case scenario would be somewhere of a blockage of Trophy Club Drive north of Bobcat. If it was north of Bobcat, then all the people north of Bobcat, there's no other way for them to get out of town other than the loop road access, if you could use that to get to the other end, to the east side of town. So when it comes to proving the need and how much the loop road really increases public safety, you're obviously always going to look at two things, right? Is like how often this thing could happen, and then how severe are the consequences if it doesn't. So obviously consequences would be extremely high if something like this would happen. But the amount of times that this could possibly happen really limits how much it directly affects the safety of our citizens. The other problem for us is data points. So when you look at when I went back 3 years in the fire department data to look at how many times we responded from one end of town to the other end of town, we had 5 data points in a 3-year span. So those 5 data points were not nearly enough for us to have a confidence interval of any significant amount for us to really say this is truly what it was, and this is going to be a true safety factor that we could prove that it's a safety factor. We can all look at the screen and say, well, yeah, it's safer to have that loop road in place. But if you're really trying to talk the Corps of Engineers into making this decision and grant us the ability to go across an ESA, then I would assume that they're going to want data to back that up. And the reality is we don't have that many data points to really stick a fork in that and call it good.
All right, you finished with that?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much for producing the report, Tom and Chiefs. I had a couple of comments. I do have Eric wishing to speak after me and Rylan after me. I appreciate the fact that you did include enough research to try to find out, do we really have any definitive data points that we can point to a significant safety factor. So I appreciate you really addressing that issue. In your conversations with the Corps, did you ever address the potential land swap issue that used to be available?
No, I did not.
All right. I don't know if it's still available or not. I could not remember that. Maybe somebody on council does. And it does help maybe in a way that you can trade like for like land within the core property and outside of the core property. So if there's town land adjacent to core property of the same type of land, you can in some cases trade it for the same amount of acreage that's in the ESA. Now, the new guidelines for the ESA maybe stopped that, but years ago when Gaylord Texan built, that's how they accomplished that task. Just from my personal opinion, I would like to see us pursue an appeal. I'm not quite sure what that will take or money-wise, but I'll just put that out for everybody to talk. Eric, you're next.
So I'm actually ready to make a motion, but I had heard a rumor that some citizens wanted to speak, and I think perhaps they should be allowed to speak before I make my motion.
All right. So I'm going to just take you off, and then you can put yourself back on and let Rylan speak, and then I'll come back to citizens.
I'm happy to wait for citizens, too.
All right. All right, so put yourself back on if you want to. So we had citizens that wish to speak. The only person I think I know of is Luann. Is that right? do you wish to speak, or who?
Yes, that's all I've received.
Okay. If you want to come to the podium, Luann, and anybody else that'd like to speak, if you'd fill out a form in back and give it to Holly Frimbers up here on my left, then you're welcome to speak on this issue. Luann.
Okay. Mayor, Town Council, Chief Carroll, and Town Manager, thank you. For those that don't know me, my name's Luann Oldham. I live on Roseville Drive, right off Bobcat. My career has been in as a real estate specialist for major municipalities. I'm now a consultant. So I took special interest in this, and I thank you very much for letting me, just as a private citizen, offer some input. I've reviewed this staff report, and in fact, Chief, you answered a couple questions for me without knowing that I already had. But the posted report of the proposed loops, roadlands, rights acquisition is very complex, what you're trying to do. You have land rights in private ownership for commercial operation, and then you have land rights that are regulated by federal regulations. And I've dealt with ESAs before, and I know the challenges you are affecting. Mayor, that was a wonderful suggestion on the land swap, if they'll still do it. I know that the town of Trophy Club has for years envisioned the completion of this loop. And by the way, I know I have a 4-minute time frame, and I don't have a PowerPoint, so we'll get through it real quick. Again, the 3 criteria that the 2001 Lake Grapevine Master Plan require in determining the necessity of this is there adjacent private land available? There's such a glaring yes to that, that's going to be a hard one to overcome. Regional arterial, of course not. We're kind of a little landlocked thing here, and we don't have any tie-ins to other transportation areas. Public safety need, it was pretty much an assumed no, but I'm going to say that I think that we can move that assumed no more to a yes. We touched on the discussions with Trophy Club Country Club regarding its willingness to consider, but there are other options that the town can take. When viewing both the federal and private landowners' current positions, as stated in the staff reports and what I've heard here tonight, it doesn't sound like the stakeholders are really interested in moving this project forward. That there are a lot of indicators that they would just soon see the other side deal with it and not have to look into it very deeply. The concern I have as a private citizen, and what I ask you to consider when you make your determinations, is the public safety matter. I feel like response times are just as critical on medical calls as on fire incidents. If I was located in the outside perimeter, let's say I was in Abbey Moore, and I had a medical emergency, and a loved one had stopped breathing, heart attack, drowning, electrocution, I know that the response time in that at 6 to 7 minutes would be unacceptable. That, as a point of reference, the human brain begins to have cellular death with no oxygen after 3 minutes. When we're talking about response times, I guess the presentation slides show emergency times, 4 minutes as best case and 7 minutes as worst case. Now, what Chief did mention is when we're looking at a first responder, it of course can be police, it can be fire. But if I have someone that stopped breathing, I want to see an EMT there, and I want to see them there within 4 minutes. And when we're talking about response times, there's a couple clarifiers that I'd like to ask Chief. Number one, most fire departments have accepted, though it's not mandatory in Texas, the National Fire Protection Association standards. I don't know if we use that or not, but response times, there's different elements of your response time, as I'm sure Chief has gone over with you. From the time the initial call comes in, processing of that call, the turnout of the unit that's going to respond, and travel time. My clarifying question would be, are these response times we're showing in the PowerPoint, are they all inclusive? Are they to the actual deployment through the emergency medical person being at the incident? Is it a total response time that we're talking about? I know that the industry guidelines are recommended under National Fire Protection Association, Section 1710, and it suggests that the deployment standard objective for a fire department for under 1710 is 240 seconds, which, do the math, is 4 minutes, or less travel time for the arrival of a unit with first responder with automatic external defibrillator or higher level capability in emergency medical incident. That's a lot of gobbledygook, but what I'm saying is, can you get someone there in 4 minutes? If my child is in the pool in Abbey-Moore, that's my concern as a private citizen. So if we're going to look at finishing the loop, shorten those times, the question as to how does the town of Trophy Club acquire the land rights necessary is a question that's going to take a lot of deliberation, and I know that it could get very expensive if you start talking about things other than land swaps. You have, a very valuable asset in the country club land, and all of it's going to be very expensive. Because if you do a partial taking or a partial acquisition, you've got to make the owner whole again, and that's the difficulty in what you're trying to do. You can't beat federal regulations when it comes to ESAs. Unless they want to look at a land swap, you're pretty much going to be roadblocked there. So the question of a public necessity for the completion of the loop, in my mind, is answered when I say I can't get somebody there within the 4 minutes or less. So I feel like the determination of a public safety or public necessity by town ordinance would allow you to move forward on your acquisition of the land rights. We really, at Trophy Club, we shouldn't be constrained to the existing travel patterns that we have. We should be able to come up with a solution to shorten that time. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luann. Chief, do you want to respond to any questions?
Sure, I can respond to the, first of all, thank you, and she's exactly right. The numbers that she quoted and the standards that she quoted is spot on. So NFPA does ask that we have those response times at 4 minutes or 4.5 minutes over in 90 percentile, so at the 90% of the time. The response times that were quoted in our presentation were travel times only. They do not include call processing times or en route times, which is the time from the call processing is from the time 911 picks up the phone until they dispatch us, and then en route time is from the time we receive the dispatching at the fire station until the time the truck is actually rolling out of the station. The national standards for that is 60 seconds on call processing and 60 seconds for EMS en route times and 80 seconds for en route times to structure fires.
Thank you, sir. Chair will recognize Eric Jensen.
So I've maintained that safety is the most important factor in doing the loop road. Also, I would love for this to come before a vote of the citizens. So with that said, I make a motion to direct Town Manager Class to proceed with an appeal and approval of moving forward with the loop road.
I'll
Have a
second.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Jensen and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Rowe. It is open for discussion.
I had put my name in, so I'll just make a point on a couple quick things I was going to say as I was kind of taking some notes while Chief Carroll was talking. Appreciate the data that you guys put together. One of the things that struck me, because I love, just coming up on 4 years on council here in a couple months, and one of the things I've always said is I like data, I like data points, I like analytical decision making, and Chief made a great point about looking back and not having a lot of data points to base our decisions on, and we're lucky, because not a lot of bad things happen here, and we're very lucky for that. The exact same thing can be said every time one of our public safety departments, whether it's Chief Carroll or Chief Arata, come before us with a budget needing certain things, or when we were designing this facility to deal with incident response, or the police department to deal with aspects of that facility, or if even when the departments are looking at staffing, for example. And these guys, you know, they war game, to reappropriate a phrase, scenarios, and they don't necessarily have a ton of data points for some of the things they make a case to us for either, but they have a distinct advantage, which is that all around our region and the United States, there are reams and reams of best practices for police and fire. And so they have all of this other information, supporting information to fall back on. And so obviously, most of the time, when one of the chiefs asks for something of that nature that we have control over, we will generally approve it based on the case that they make, not based on the real-life data points in Trophy Club or even the likelihood of it happening, but because we're trying to achieve a best practice that gives the best possible coverage to our residents, basically, right? I kind of see an analog in the challenge we have before us today, because we have, like Chief Carroll said, a lack of data points that demonstrate the issues that we would be trying to solve and improve coverage here for if we were able to complete this road. However, if you were to, I think, dig into just the best practices of how you design transportation and thoroughfare plans in a high-density residential area, no one would look at our current map and our arterial roads and say that it is anything near a best practice, because we have several miles of arterial roads going all the way around the town, and then there's about a half a mile where they don't touch. And it doesn't make any sense. Why? Because it was always the plan to have them connect. Plan predated the environmentally sensitive area policy of the Corps. Plan predated the master plan for Lake Grapevine. It predated all these things that are now a challenge for us. That doesn't mean those things aren't legitimate. They obviously have to be dealt with. We can't tell the federal government what to do. If we could, we wouldn't be here talking about this. That said, I think that provides an interesting conversation for us to have with the folks that we need to work with to see if we can get this done, because I think that despite our lack of real-world data points, we do have a great deal of information that is interesting and unique to the way this town was designed, and because we saddle up so close to Corps of Engineer land in so many areas, that I agree with Eric's motion, and I'd like to see it proceed. I will support the motion. I just wanted to say my little spiel about data points, because when Chief Carroll said that, it just triggered a thought in my head. So that's all I've got.
Councilmember Schaffner.
Yeah, and I agree with Ryland. I think that when we task the chiefs with this task as far as to look at public safety, if you look at the data, which is what they have to look at, it may not just jump off the page that it's, you know, a need. But I think that we as citizens understand that when we're in a unique situation in Trophy Club, we don't have the luxury of Station 2 and Station 3 and Station 4 backing up. We have Roanoke, we have Westlake, we have Mutual Aid, obviously, but we don't have, like some bigger cities around us, the other stations who would fill the gap. And so when there is an emergency call in Abbey Moore, and they respond to that call, and it's say it's a grass fire, or it's something that's smoke, and they clear that. And they're on the side of Abbey Moore, and you get a call on Canterbury Hills, they have to go all the way around to do that call. They don't have the luxury of calling Station 2, can you cover that for us? And so I think that we as citizens understand that no matter if the data points say that the loop road is not needed because of emergencies, I think we understand in our mind that, oh yeah, it is needed, because if they're here and we're here, we want them there as quickly as we possibly can get them. And so for that reason, I also support the motion. I think that we should appeal, and we should keep appealing. I've always been for the loop road, and I think that I appreciate the staff report, but I think that we all realize that, if it's our loved ones, if it's our neighbors, if it's our friends, we want those emergency vehicles there as quickly as possible. And there's always going to be that unique situation in Trophy Club where they're clear and the call's on the other side of town. And the same thing can happen to the police. The police respond to what is a perceived emergency on one side of town. Most of minimum staffing, as you said, sometimes is 2 officers. Those 2 officers are going to respond, and then something could happen on the other side of town. And a loop road only adds to that safety scenario in those rare circumstances.
Thank you, Philip. I'm next to speak, and then Greg. I support the motion. I think it's something very important for us to do. I think we have evidence that we have planned for something different than what they're allowing us to do for many, many years. And so it surely is an opportunity. I think the safety factor, especially that Luann brought up, is we can look at our drive times that didn't have anything to do with the dispatch time and getting in the vehicle time. And we have a lot of citizens then placed at risk if they were seriously in an emergency situation. I don't believe Roanoke could get here fast enough. I don't believe Westlake could get here fast enough. I don't believe Southlake could get here fast enough as we could, given we had the vehicle available to do that. The 4-minute time frame is critical for actually saving someone's life. And so I think it's hard for me to think that the Corps can deny trying to get us a way to do that if, in fact, it really is save a life that is in front of us. So I support that, and then we'll let Greg speak, and then Alicia.
I'm not going to speak for 3 minutes. The motion speaks for itself. I support it.
Alicia?
Mine's quick, too. I support the motion as well. Even though we only have the 5 data points from 3 years, that's, 5 people that could have been saved if it came down to a minute or 2, like Luann said. Every second could count in situations like that. And I think that safety aspect far outweighs convenience or people worried about cut-throughs and things like that. I think if you do look at the safety aspect, that should be a good appeal for the. That's it.
All right. We have a motion before us directing the town manager to proceed with the appeal with a second. Any other discussion? Any citizens wish to speak? All right, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. It is approved. Item number 13, discussion of items of future agenda and include agenda items for consideration on the April 10th, 2018 council agenda and items from the town council future agenda list. So council, call your attention to page 268 and 269, which are our next council meeting on April the 10th. Anybody have anything on this list that they would like to see? It's not on this list, but you'd like to see it done at the next meeting.
I do. I have something.
Yeah, Alicia?
I'd like to talk about the feasibility or need for a possible U-turn sign before the roundabout
On
Trophy Lake.
Trophy Lake.
Oh, speaking of, can we get an update? Maybe we can make that part of an update of the traffic study.
The traffic study.
Of the traffic study?
Yeah.
It'd be a good catch-all. It'd be just a
So
good
I'll
catch-all
second that.
topic.
Add traffic study to it. Is that good with you?
Perfect. Yep.
right.
Sounds good.
All right. Anybody else for our next agenda? All right. Then we'll call your attention to page 270, 271. Anybody wish to add something to a future agenda list?
Just want to make sure that Mr. Class would be ready for that traffic study by the 10th. Maybe we need to put it on future agenda.
Or it
not
could
the
just be
10th
an
agenda.
update. Might not
Yeah,
be a-
TMP's working on that now. We can at least check to see where they are on
Right.
it. So it may or may not be able to happen.
All right. I think that would be assumed in this request, is we've surely got to have the data in order to get it there. All right. Anybody else, everything? All right. Seeing no more action, it is 9:07. We stand adjourned.